I'm Bill Lawson, and I'm fortunate that Carrie asked me to join you guys. I've been a little background is I grew up in a sailing family. My dad was national champion, probably about 3 or 4 different classes over the years, and just grew up in a small dinghy racing background. Um, I did a lot of sailing when I was in my teens and 20s, and then I got into the marine industry, offshore salvage, and did that until I retired about 4 years ago, and got back into sailing again. And um, the marine industry has been great for my uh, a great career. So I wanted to give back a little bit and try and do a little teaching here and there. And this is my first presentation, so bear with me. and uh, but I do a little. I've been working. I don't know, probably 3 weeks a year for the past couple of years at the Naval Academy, helping teach their ensigns to teach the plebes when they come in. So I'm just getting a feel of this, and we'll see where. And Carrie asked me to do something on current, and I put together a presentation. I'll try and keep it. What do you like? Half hour, hour, or half hour, hour? Okay. This got a little bit bigger than I expected, but as I started putting it together, it's about 15 slides or so. So we'll see where it goes. Is that a good sound check? Okay. All right. You ready to get started? All right. Like I said, I'm Bill Lawson. The subject for this little presentation is understanding current, and we can go to the next slide here. And this is what you're gonna. What I'm gonna try and give you is what is current and its effects. Oh, all right. There you go. All right, there you go. All right. And so what to expect? What is current and its effects? Uh, how do you add? How to get current? Put current in your day's strategy of going out sailing, and then understanding what the current is on the race course, and then give you a few examples that I can relate to stuff that happened to me and that may um, go in and talk about what's going on. The guy I know is a coach at. He was a professional coach. He was Maryland's soccer women's and men's coach, and also did, I think Cornell, and he was also All American. And he was funny is his explanation. He said that sailboat racing is the most complex sport out there because it's it has all the dynamics of every other sport. Instead of 15 minutes or 5 minute plays or 3 minute plays, you're out there for 45 minutes or more on the race course, and the playing field is constantly in motion. And that really puts a lot of stuff in perspective when you hear that from a professional athlete. And so basically, since it is that, and you cannot predict anything, the only goal we have now is to make less mistakes than the next guy. Because you're going to make mistakes. And what you don't want to do is have the costly mistakes. A lot of little ones are fine, and you don't get upset about it. You just keep moving on and say, I'm going to get better, or we can work on this when we get back to this, or let's just put that aside and go on to the bigger picture. And I'll be getting to that. Hold on. And okay, next one. So, what is current? Current is just the movement of water over the ground. It's basically caused by tides, and and the tides are caused by the rotation of the sun and the moon, and and their gravity effect moves the water back and forth. Okay, there's and around here there's diurnal cycles. So you have a cycle of 2 high tides and 2 low tides every day. And then there are what they call neap and spring tides, when the sun and moon line up. But what you really want to do is you want to see that, and we'll go over this as an example, but if you look in your tide tables, in the course of a day, you'll look and you'll see something like this. The tides are never going to be the same from each period. There's going to be highs and lows. And then when you get to a spring tide, you're going to see more of a exaggeration in one direction than the other. And then if you get to a neap tide, and I'm not going to go into those explanations because I don't understand them all that well. And so you'll see that they're all fairly even. And that happens like, twice a month. So when you get, so that you can stress that, that on tidal situations, that's very critical. Oh, thank you. And then the other one is gravity. Now, what happens is if you have any, if you have you tilt, let's say a dish or a bowl sideways and you put water at the top, of course, gravity is going to take it down to the bottom. Well, with areas of bodies, especially like the Chesapeake Bay, it's very large. And we get, you can get gravity effects by barometric pressure, by wind, or man-made. And what happens is, if you think of the Chesapeake Bay like this, and normally this is your water here. Well, if you have a big high pressure system over here, which is, a high pressure system, which is more pressure pushing down on the earth, and a low pressure system here, over here, what will this look like? You got force down here and less up here. The water's going to look like this. And perfect example is a hurricane's a very low pressure system. And if you remember what 10, 15 years ago, Hurricane Isabel came up the coast, went inside of us and around to the top of the bay, and we had this low pressure system up here. As soon as it got up here, what happened? The whole bay started marching up here and flooded us to no end. That's a perfect example of gravity working with moving the water. The other thing that you can do that happens is, let's just say if you get a lot of wind, a very good example is when we get a low pressure system moving over in this area and the wind's going counterclockwise, we get what's called a nor'easter. And when a nor'easter really starts honking, the wind is so forceful that it's pushing the water out of the bay. And you'll see that, here, that's, basically the force here of the wind is pushing the bay, the water like this, and pushing it out. And then the other one, and that's a big one, man-made, is anytime we get huge rainstorms, the guys up at the Susquehanna River decide that, hey, we're getting too much water up there, and they open up the floodgates. And sure enough, after a hurricane or something like that, you'll see all the debris, motorhomes, oil tanks, everything, tires, coming down the bay, and that's when, and that ends up with that the high tides, greater high tides and gravity taking them out of the bay. Then friction hydrography. See here. All right. Now, depth is a big issue. Is if you think about it, anywhere there's a shoreline that kind of looks like this, this being the water level, there's more friction in this area. So they're going to be just slower moving water because of the friction. And a lot of this stuff is just very good, common sense, practical thought about it. And of course, all the main water is going to be traveling here. Of course, the current's going to be faster in this area. Also, along the shoreline here, if you think about it, you get a area like this. You can take the main current is going to be coming down here, and as time goes, getting less and less as you get the friction of the shoreline. So you use all these as a guideline to help do your daily plan.
But on this drawing here, which is something you observe near some point, is that you can also have a funnel effect, where you have all the current that's coming down funneled into a narrow area.
Right, and what it would do, there'd still be less current here on the edges, but this will be exaggerated and flowing more. Yeah, definitely convergence is used in there. In the middle.
If you're going this way.
Yeah, if you're going that way, yeah. If you're going that way, yeah, yeah. It's definitely.
You're going this current, hug the shore.
Yeah. Yes, there is, and I'll go over that when we get into that area and some good examples. And then bottom topography, if there's rocks and stuff like that, you'll see that it'll slow it down a little bit, but you don't use that too much. Changes in the changes at the shoreline. Oh, that's what I was going to say is if what happens is if you get an area, a good example is this chart here. What you're going to see is when there's an outgoing tide, here's this is right off Newport Harbor here, and what'll happen is on an outgoing tide, it will slow down earlier along the shoreline because there's more friction. So if let's say it's getting close to it's an ebb tide going out, and and you're trying to go into the harbor, and it's getting close to slack. Well, if you get right close to the shoreline, it's going to be almost nothing, nil. And then also when and then when it changes, it's going to be changing in the middle first, and then the shoreline because of the friction. So so that you can use that to your advantage too. And then all right, okay, and then change the line, and let's see here. A couple contradictory things is if you're in a river like this, you're going to see around points of land there's usually shoaling out here like this. The current will basically go outside around these outside edges and stay around the point. So these areas will be less current and less current here. Okay. Now, there's another thing that if you have a piece of land that kind of looks like this, and if you think of like the Severn River where it comes out to what's the point out here? Greenberry Point, yeah, or no, not Greenberry, Thomas Point area, is the current will be coming down here. All this water's coming in like this. Right? Well, if you think about it, if this is coming here, all this water is getting closer together. So you're going to get higher currents around the points there. That's friction. That's different. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what makes it so dynamic. And then on top of that, sometimes you'll find that water will come around these areas here and you can get back at it. And it will actually be going contrary. That's where I can't remember the name of the current. I want to say Humboldt, but it's not Humboldt. It's inside the Gulf Stream on the East Coast. There's another current going north, or Labrador, or south rather. South, yeah, south rather, going opposite direction. Yep, that's it. And so you'll find that. So now, see if there's anything else that I missed on this one. Those are kind of the fundamentals that you have to look at. Gravity, tidal, and friction, and to put that all into your game plan. Okay, let's go to the next one. Daily strategy. Can't stress is you got to do your homework. Before you go out. A lot of times I'll before any big regatta, I'll just start doing my homework a month ahead of time, looking to see what the average wind conditions are, what current situations, seeing, tidal buoys, do all this kind of stuff. And but the biggest thing is current going to be a factor? The more the wind, the less current becomes a dynamic factor because the speed changes depending on the current. If we get a quarter knot, half knot, but that's going to change your boat speed maybe, less than an eighth of a knot or something like that. But if it's blowing 25 knots out there, it's not going to make any hill beans, if there's any current out there. But so you really have to say, okay, is it part of my game plan to use current? Sometimes it's all your game plan because in real light air, heavy current environment, it is a current game and you're playing current only. But you have to figure out where that is in your in the speed of the boat. So of course, higher the wind speed, the less the factor. The hydrography. Is this an open course? Is it out in the middle of the bay? Or are we just sailing right here in a river where there's a lot of channels or multiple channels coming out of different rivers, things like that? Is it close to shore or are we in a river or a tributary? Makes a big difference. The size of the course. If we go out there and we're racing in the bay and we're doing like a Annapolis Yacht Club race or Eastport Yacht Club or something like that, they got a bigger playing field, and then but if you get into, let's say, a dinghy race here, like a Wednesday night or Thursday night, or some things that you guys might do locally on an afternoon, you know, maybe the field, the races are only 15-minute weather legs. You can't even get out of the current in that period of time, so it doesn't play a part in it. So the size of the course makes a big difference. Effects on apparent wind and sailing angle. Now that is something I use a lot. And what happens is, if you have, I hope I can do this, give this some justice, is that you have a wind coming this direction and current coming this direction. A boat sailing like this, and a boat sailing like this. This is on starboard tack and on port tack. All right. Now, if there's no current, this is the direction the boat's going, right? All right. Now, if the current is moving it's basically vector addition. Current is then pushing you this way, this much. Your actual sailing direction and wind, apparent wind, has shifted and makes it look like you're on a header. So as the current increases and this increases, it gets further and further. Same thing with this. You know, the wind is here. You're going to be out in this direction, and you're going to have more your apparent wind is going to make you fall off what your normal course would be with if you're sailing with no current. So what'll happen is, in a course without current, you'll be sailing, you know, nice and happy, 45 degrees off the wind, right? Here, on each tack. You get out in current, next thing you know, you're sailing 60 degrees on one tack, maybe even 70 degrees on another tack, you know? And so what you can use this to your benefit is okay, let's just say you're trailing, you're kind of in the back of the fleet, you know, and that happens a lot. And you and so you know, you look up there and you say, look, all their sailing angles started getting wider and wider and wider. They just got out into the current. So what do? Is like, here's the weather mark, and you see this group, wind's coming from here, you're sailing this direction, and all of a sudden you see these guys over here, and their sailing angle just got huge. And this is where you say the current is. Well, what you do is you hightail it over here and stay out of the current and come back in, and you might have gained half the distance or even past it, you know? Mm-hmm. Yep. It's, mm-hmm. Yeah. I will be getting it. I will be getting that, and that's what I'm trying to say. Is this is my daily strategy? This is what I start with, is going in here and seeing what we got. You can, and I'll go through this a little bit further. So that's the effect on sailing angles of the current, and then the effect on these ladder rungs. I'm going to show you something else that can happen. Is this usually doesn't happen this way, but this tells you the dynamics of what I showed you with current vector, with the adding vector addition of using current. Is if you have a start of a race here, and this is, perfectly dead upwind like this, right? And you take a perfect world at this start, and the wind's not shifting, boats are exactly the same speed, and it's you got zero current here, and let's just say right up in here, it is 5 knots of current, and it's just right across the board. So Mark being right up here. If a guy starts here on port tack and a guy starts here on starboard tack, who do you think is going to make it to the weather mark first? Oh, it's going this direction, but it changed when this guy arrives here at this point, and this guy arrives here at this point. They still sailed in zero current and going the exact same speed, exact same tacking angle, exact same wind angles, everything. Who do you think is going to win? Port. You know why?
Wait, for the starboard tack, the boat on the left side.
Boat on the left side?
Starboard tack.
Yep. Okay. So the reason being is when this guy's going this direction, the current is going that direction, right? His new apparent wind angle of steering will be over here. And so that means that he just got headed. And if you take the his original, I know that you guys were doing ladder rungs. I saw that in one of your things earlier. Like that, there's the ladder rungs, is that the ladder rungs would shift, and that would be a lift for him to go up on this tack on port. So he just got headed. He got headed.
The other one is lifted, so he gets closer to the mark.
Right. No, he gets headed too. He gets headed too. They both get headed. Yeah, that's exactly right. So right. Right. No, 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 because what happens is, like I said, the current will push you this direction. So his new course is like this. This guy has to tack, and he's here. So he gets that same thing. So he's headed. So now these guys, yep. Okay, yep. Once he tacks, his stern will be right there. And he will be heading up there. This guy will end up about right there.
Because the current
Yeah.
the boat on the right is going to be going faster than the boat on the left because the current.
No, he's not. Because what happens is you have to think, that's one thing I forgot to put in here, is you have to think that a lot of people get the misinterpretation that current is like water moving over the ground, right? But when you put a boat on top, you're moving with the water. So there is no difference, speed difference between this boat and this boat if the current is exactly the same. They're moving in a plane.
Because once they're
Yeah. Yeah. But they're still, even if they are on the same tack, the water is moving and you're moving with it.
Right, but because the vector in the case of the purple tack, or I'm sorry, the port tack, is against the boat's direction, is against the direction of travel, the the speed over ground will be less for the boat going into the current than the boat going with it. Even though that boat gets the shift.
But I'm saying it relative to each other, you are moving with that plane.
Yeah, relative to the ground, the marker.
Right.
So you'll be traveling at different speeds. But I just remember spending a lot of time with this because I find it so hard to conceptualize that you want to be down the current.
Mm-hmm.
I remember
Yeah, and at the end, I'll give you a couple of sources to go to if you really want to look into this stuff even further. These are great. There's some videos out there that explain the actual math of this, and I'll give you those links to that to look at. And so, but you always think of this the course moving, because another thing is that as this course is moving, if someone sets up the weather mark here directly upwind, the longest tack, can anyone say which is the longest tack? It's going to be port. The reason being is by the time all said and done over the course of time, you guys are going to be over here. That's it. And so you're going to spend more time on port tack getting up to this mark because you're shifted. And rule of thumb is you always want to be on the longest tack first, because you can play shifts on your longest tack. You got more variables to tack back and forth and play shifts. But you don't do that at the cost of getting into current either. So that's where this whole dynamics of sailboat racing really gets confusing, and every situation is different. Every day is different, even on the same course. So you got to put all these tools in your toolbox and start looking at your day's strategy early and figuring out what am I going to do. Let's go to the next one here. Okay, before the regatta, this is what I do, and is first you pull out a weather chart, see what the course is going to be like. Is it going to be light air, shifty? Is it stable or unstable conditions? Meaning, stable means it's going to be steady winds. Unstable meaning shifty, erratic, whatever. Check the tide table. See if you're spring or neap tides. Are there going to be changes? Is it going to be stronger in one direction for the course of the day? When's it going to change? Then also, what were the weather for the past few days? Rain, wind. Do we have those effects of increased water up the bay or down the bay? Because that means that when the tides change, they may change earlier or later. They may also have more strength coming in or going out, depending on what the conditions were. So let's say if there was a lot of rain, you know that the flood tide, I mean the ebb tides are going to be really strong, and the flood tides may be kind of minimal. And then start your observations when you get down to the you look at the pilings and see where the tide's been, and stuff like that. I live on a neighborhood in Edgewater, and I drive down Shore Drive, and I look out at the piers all the time and see what the height of the water is on the pier or on the beaches and stuff like that. And you'll notice that, certain days there'll be extremely high and some days extremely low. And like, I'm going to a regatta, I'll just on my day out for the week earlier, just keep looking at that and see what it looks like if it's been extreme or not extreme. Are they higher or lower than normal? Pull out your chart and reference the course. Where the channels are, where the plateaus and shelves are. See where the wind is compared to those plateaus and shelves, because let's say like out here, if it's blowing from the northeast, you're going to be up in around the tributaries. But if it's a southerly and they send you out in the bay, it's a whole total different profile for understanding what the current's doing. Okay, and then expect where you think the start and weather marks are, and then you put yourself in that chart and say, okay, these are the effects that I'm going to have, whether they're, points of land, rivers, tributaries, or is it just out in the bay where I just have the main channel and a couple of shorelines, things like that. And then, all right, and then reference marks. Know what's out there, because when you go out in the water, sure doesn't look like the chart, because a lot of times I'll get out there and I'll say, I thought that buoy was over there, but it's not. You look at it on the chart, you kind of get yourself a good feeling of where things are, because it can be deceiving, where a mark is compared to looking at it on a chart and then going out there going, boy, those two marks look like they're awfully closer together than they did on the chart, So it's like, and just know where, get your bearings there, and know where the normal channels of boat traffic are, depth of the densest area for crab pots, because crab pots a lot of times certain times of the year they're setting them at 20 feet in the spring and like early spring, and then in the summertime they're probably at 6 feet or so. So you figure out where they are, and then know where the fishing grounds are, because if you say that there's a fishing ground over there that right near your race course, you go out there and you're going upwind and you're saying, hey, I want to get close to that shoal, and you say, oh, there's the fleet of boats. I know where that shoal is, it's right there. And then visualize, and then I do this, I visualize a race. I say, okay, if the wind's coming from this direction, it's probably going to be windy, or it's, but I can get out in the current. It's going to be around noon. That's highest flood tide. Maybe we can over here is a nice little area that you can get out of stuff. I don't know if that's geeky or not, but that's what I do. And then let's go to the next one. So now you've done all your homework, and you go out there and you get to the boat park. So the first to arrive, you go in there, you look at the wind direction, the speed, kind of see what the day is like. Go over to look at the pilings. Say, hey, it's low tide now. Is it coming up or going down? You can tell by the water marks on it. And just say, okay. You look out and you say, there's a buoy right out here, or a day mark. What's the current doing? Is it going in, going out? You can see it from the streams. Look at the cloud patterns in the direction, just to help you I always do that to help verify what the weatherman says and what's really going to happen, you know. And so, and then you go back, rig your boat, talk to your friends, have some coffee, pack your lunch, get some water, your sailing clothes on, and you head out, get your boat in the water, and you rig up and you start getting ready to go sail. Do the same thing over again. Look at the pier, look at the pilings, look at the buoys, you know, look at everything. Also, at that time, you've kind of generally gotten your game plan together. You know, kind of understand what's going to happen for the day. Then you just sit there and just discuss it with the team, going, "Hey guys, I think it's going to be really stable conditions. It's going to be a southerly coming in. Probably going to get here early around 11 o'clock. They'll probably have us sit out there from like 9 to 10:30, hang out, get hot, and then the breeze is going to come in. Okay, and then at that time, keep an eye on the freighters. They should be turning around this time. You know, let's verify if they're on schedule, things like that. Oh, looks like they're turning early. Might be a little bit heavier because they're heavier flood tide because there's a high right off the coast. You know, something like that. And then you kind of get your game plan together. So uh, and then get their input and their observations because you can't run a team with just one person, you know, and just discuss it all out. Make sure you're all on the same plan. That you go out there and get ready to go sailing. And then once we get out there, we'll go to the next one. Pre-start. This is a big one for me. Is you try and develop a pattern for the surface current. You know, you look at your freighters, the buoys, the crab pots, the anchored boats. Just observe everything out there. You know, let's just see what's happening. Sail your first leg. Can't stress enough. If you see the best sailors out there, they try and be the first ones out. There's a race to be the first one off the pier, you know, and you head out there and they sail a full weather course and weather leg, and they already know what's happening that whole weather leg before the race even starts, you know. And when you do that, you can find one of the things when looking just for current on the current side, I'm not going to be discussing wind shifts or all these other variables, is that when you're looking for the find out where the line of the channel is, you look for like scum line. You'll see like there'll be like a scum, you know how there's like this brown water, turbulent bubble type stuff. You'll see that right at the edge of a current line. Disturbed waters, you'll see water stands up especially if the current's going against the wind, and you get into shallower waters, the waves stand up higher. You look for that. Different color water, especially in the Caribbean. You'll get to the Gulf Stream is a perfect example. It changes to a beautiful eyesight, and there may be an anchored boat here, fishing boat anchored here, another buoy like the weather buoy here, and you're sailing. What I'll do is I'll put my eyesight on this mark, and if all of a sudden it starts changing, and I start drifting, right, like here, because of the current, I can see the shoreline change and how drastic it can change. So wherever you are sailing your course, you can actually test how much current you got. And one of the perfect examples is let's just say that we know for a fact this is a current related race. It's almost all current. You got a weather mark here. I'm gonna start here. And there's current all in this area. This is the channel. So everyone goes out port tack. Everyone's doing that. Starboard tack, sorry. And then tack on the port. And you're heading over here. I'm sitting there taking this range. And all of a sudden I can see myself drifting a little bit and a little bit, now a little bit more, now a little bit more. And I'm not going to make that mark. And then all of a sudden, these guys behind me are going further to the left. Well, that I'm going to tack and get over to the left before I get out in this current and stay ahead of them and get and stay out of the current more. Or if I see these guys falling off and they're looking like this, and I'm starting to drift off, and I'm not going to make it, I'll take some more bites out of the current and then try and come across. And one of the things that I stress is that you want to spend the least amount of time in current. That's the goal, is to, so when you hit any current, you want to be going fast. You never want to be pinching. You never want to be trying to, but the worst thing you can do is try and say, oh, I can make the mark and pinch and try and pinch up to the mark because you're going, and what happens is, so the best thing you can do if, in that condition is take a tack, get up here and come across. I'd rather overshoot and and come across with speed and get across there, because as soon as you have to tack out here in the highest current, you're dog meat. So it's all right. Let's see what next we have. Okay. Now you've gotten. Okay, here we go. We've gotten that current factor. How much? Do your range sighting. Check tacking angles and jibing angles. So when you go upwind and you got your compass and you're getting the high current, well, normally, you know, you'll have 90 degrees between tacking angles, but in other currents, it's going to open up. So you want to know what that is. It's painful that you have to tack through 120 degrees, but that's life. That's what it is. So you just got to understand that when you look over your shoulder, you're not going to, and the mark's over there, you're not going to make it. You're just not going to make it. You look over your shoulder and there's a guy over there, you're behind him. You know? And so, so yeah, but on that note, upwind, the tacking angles, if the current's coming this direction, the tacking angles get open up. But same thing as going downwind, your jibing angles get closer because you're going faster. So one of the big mistakes we can make is going downwind, that instead of going out here like this, you're going to end up getting swept and you're going to be way out here and you're not going to be coming into the, you'll end up being swept down like this and you'll have to come into like a reach and sail extra distance. So what you want to do is also know your jibing angles so that you don't, sorry, so you don't go out to the wings too far. You do it on your when you're practicing before the race. So you have to go, you sail the weather leg, well, you got to sail the downwind leg to get back down. And so you go over here and see what your driving angles are coming into this mark. And when in doubt, you know, of course, you want to stay out into the current for sure. If the current's on one side, you want to kind of stay in that area. But remember, you know, you might want to take a couple jibes depending on how well you can do it without losing a lot of distance. But and see where your jibe taking you to the mark will be, because sometimes it'll surprise you how fast you can go. So as soon as you go downwind, you're going fast. You go downwind with current, you're going really fast, and things happen probably. So if that weather leg took you 20 minutes, that downwind leg is probably going to take you 5 to 7. You know. So, all right. And then another thing I try and do is now that you've gone upwind, now you can put your current strategy together, where you want to go be on the course compared relative to the strength of the current and where the marks are and what side of the fleet you want to be on. You know, if you want to be off to the left, well, you better be the boat furthest left, or leading the pack furthest left, that kind of stuff. And then, so then we're getting close to the start. So another thing I've done, especially in really, really high current, is you get in, and you don't have to do it at the weather mark. So let's just see, this is committee vote. Is the current, let's just say the current sweeping like this. When you're stalled, and you're sitting here just luffing, waiting for the start. Next thing you know, you pull in and your sails and get ready to take off. Well, you've probably drifted down to here, and that distance to the line is increased significantly. So also, if you set up and you're trying to start at the pin end, the next thing you know, you can't make it. So what I'll do for, I'll try and come in here on port tack at 30 seconds to go. I want to be right where I think I want to be to start. And I'll go in, loft, you know, sit here, and then at 30 seconds, be able to ready to sheet in and go and see where I end up. And sometimes I'll end up way down here. Sometimes I'll overshoot. And that just gives me, you practice a few times and then you figure out what that drift is and how it affects you. And a lot of times what I've done in really heavy current is I'll go out in a laser and I'll sit there and I'll try and keep my nose right on the buoy and practice and keep me right in that position and figure out how I can stay there and see how long I can stay there. A lot of times you can only stay there for 20 seconds and then you're already 3 boat lengths down, you know, and that just gives you a little bit more feeling of how to come into the line. So, so let's say I'm sitting up here, middle line start, and I've already sighted. I got a tower that I'm looking at as a range to keep me on the line, and I can sit there and just throttle back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then I know for a fact I'm going to end up down here, you know, and I'm going to be like middle left start, you know, but the worst thing you can do is get below this or drift way down here and everyone comes right over top of you and you're dead. you know. It's, you know, it's good to sit there and practice, and your crew will be happy you did, because if you get a good start, they think it's a pain for you to practice all this stuff, you know, because why are you practicing? You're supposed to know this stuff, right? And it's like, no. But if you get a good start, everyone's happy, you know. So, okay, if the pin boat or boat is favored, do a 30-second drill. Check your drift. If light, stay in the putt for 3 to 5 minutes before the start. If the current's a big factor, keep moving. The boat moving can go anywhere on the course. If you sit there and you're just luffing or stalled, it's going to take you forever to accelerate to get there. So many times, if you get in like real light air and high current, you'll get a start line here, and you can see the dark spots of water coming down. And all of a sudden, you say there's no real dark spots here, and there's nothing down here, and there's all these boats here, and there's no wind below them because they're obstructing the wind. I'll go up here and just play around. And then all of a sudden, I can come down here with speed, do my little 30-second run, and off we go. You know, so keep the boat moving in light air, especially in heavy current, even more so in heavy current. And then look at what's favored or the longest tack, depending on the current. Like we said here, if the current's taking it this way, the longest tack's always going to be port tack. You know, or if the current's coming this direction, you know, it's going to be starboard tack. So, and then with all this fooling around, don't miss the gun or get too far away. and someone always told me that the definition of experience is learning from your mistakes. So don't get too far away. So after the start, keep your strategy. If there's temporary shift, don't let it push you out in the wrong direction. If you get forced by other boats, don't let them force you to go away from your current strategy. You know, duck them. You know, if you have to slow down and go behind them to get back over to the left because you know the left's going to pay off because of the current, do it. Be the best positioned boat on your side. If you think that you're in a river and the right has no current and the left has no current on the shoreline, just if you're going left, be the guy to the left the most and the first. If the right, the way you're going, be the guy to the right the furthest and the most, you know, and you can always win or make out by doing that. At least you're winning your pack. You don't know which pack's going to win, but you're winning your pack. Okay. Use ranges to note current changes. Just like I told you, there is just always sight things. You can, whatever that's out there, even if a boat's moving, if it's moving slow, you can still use it a little bit and kind of interpolate. And know your tacking angles. You know, notice the changes. Like I said, as soon as they start opening up, you know that those guys just hit the current. You know, I use the compass all the time. I mean, probably every 20 seconds. Yeah. I have one on the deck right there in the front. Yeah. But nowadays they have the digital ones, and they're nice. Usually with the old disc ones, you know, the bigger the disc, the better. But I never really looked at the numbers. I just looked at the way the card was moving, you know, and just kind of got a reference there. And I'm blind as a bat, so it's so these big digital ones are great. So So is your course adjusted to the current? Get on the longest tack. Know your vectors and your ladder rungs. Know where what your headings are changing. If they are changing, how does it affect everyone around you? Don't get pinned at the weather mark. Now that's a big one. When you get up to the weather mark, you see this over and over and over, is you're up here at the weather mark and all of a sudden here you are coming in on port tack. Remember, there's a 3 boat length circle here, right? And but in the current coming, let's just say it's coming like this. And you got guys way down here, probably 20 boat lengths coming across, and they go all the way up to what they think is the ley line. And they tack. Next thing you know, they're down here. And the next guy behind him does the same thing. He ends up down here. Next guy up here ends up here. A couple guys try and get across and they end up here. Next thing you know, you got this bunch here that are all trying to get right around inside the 3 boat length circle. And next thing you know, one guy hangs up here on the mark. He's going head to wind. And then there's another one here. And there's and then you're coming in here and you're trying to dodge all these guys, and so what happens is when you see guys going up here, figure out, the hard part is finding out what lane is the lane that actually works. Well, this may work, this lane may work if there's no boats around you. You're going the fastest you can and everything else. But all you have to do is have one guy tack on your lee bow and slow you down. Next thing you know, you're down here in this pack again. And how many times have we come in there and tried 2 or 3 or 4 times to get around the mark, and either ran into the mark, ran into another person, or lost 20 boats? That's it happens. So there's some times when it's better not to be in this big parade coming in, because and it may be when you come in and you dodge through these guys from the port side, is you go over top of them, and even though you go a little bit over and you may lose 1 or 2 boats, it's a more conservative approach, because either I can lose 2 boats or I can lose 20 boats. I'll take losing 2 boats anytime, and the other thing is, if you come in here and you're almost reaching and there's a bunch of boats here, you can come in and either get inside them here, or you can work your way up on top and then go across and not lose that many boats, or maybe gain probably 10 boats. These guys that got just jumbled up and are hurting each other. So that's why I stress the part of that, don't get pinned at the mark. It's a lot, mark roundings are where a lot of positions do change, and so you have to and talk it out with your crew too. Tell them, hey, going behind the yellow boat, going ahead of the blue boat. We're gonna go 2 boat lengths up off the ley line and then tack. We're not going to, he'll say, he says, lee bound. No, we're going 2 boat lengths above the ley line. You tell them, communicate. And, okay, spend the least amount of time in the strongest current, sail for speed. If there's, if there's any differential in current where there's current here, the marks here, I want to be right on that mark at full speed and be on full speed from here to there. I don't want to be on port tack more than, a minute, 20 seconds. I just want to come right around because, and then, so, and be careful not to use up the race course. That's another thing is if we're struggling, there's a mark here, and we are going out here to where we think there's less current in this area. If I go all the way out here and tack all the way here, that means probably if it's a big course, I've missed 10 or 15 shifts. If I was over here and hit I got a header tacked up, got another header tacked up, another header tacked up, and then stayed out. And then all of a sudden I said, uh-oh, there's a little bit of current starting in here. Now it's time to boogie over here. And I get the next lift. I'm usually ahead of the guy that just went all the way out to the end. So yeah, to do not, be careful not to use up your race course because there could be some big shifts out there. Once you're out here, you're in no man's land. So, all right, next one. Okay, example. Why don't we go to the next slide? Well, I'm going to show you Hackett's Point, which is using a shelf, which I've used as this example a lot. Trident Point, which is short course and using channels, and then the outside course. So let's do this. Hackett's Point here, you'll see there's a big shelf here. We sail lasers a lot of times. We'll start down in here, or SSA courses is all in this area. So we'll start down in here. And if there's a mark out in here where there's a little bit of current, that's where you'll sail up, and a lot of guys will just go all the way up in here, shoal, and come across. Sometimes it's, but when you get out in here, there's a point where that there's some current, and you'll as you're coming into the mark, you'll take your range and you'll see yourself start drift, because this is the main body of the bay out here. The water's moving out here. So another example would be, what would we think of saying it is, if you're sailing down in this area, and there's a mark up here coming, let's say at 180 like this. This is kind of a sea breeze, and you might want to get up inside here, because if there's a flood tide in the channel here. But if you start sailing out here, you'll notice you'll start drifting. If you have take a sighting on like this mark out here, and you'll start noticing or this mark here, you'll start sliding sideways. Time to tack and get up in here. It's so the next one. Yeah, you can go on the next one there. There we go. This is a chart I found from 1911, and I loved it because it shows the graduations a little bit more pronounced. So, your changes in current are not going to be one and then the other. it's going to be graduated levels, and they're going to change as they go out here. So the new modern technology charts really, they may be accurate for positioning, but they don't help you as much as something from 1911. So I love that example. It shows you that, you know, as they're going out, the current is that real channel, that's where you're going to see it. It's not that big of an area, you know, but there are like, I just love that chart. Let's go to the next one. So another thing that when a lot of frostbite or Tuesday night series things like that, we sail right in this area. This has been squished up because of the way I put it, but there a lot of times there'll be a mark right here, and from a northeaster or a northwester, and so you're sailing up lots of shifts, lots of shifts, but there's a lot of current here. But there's also a lot of wind funneling down the bit, down that river. So there, you get up here and there's a choice. Sometimes there's a lull, sometimes there's a puff. Sometimes if there's a huge puff, you can come in from this side. But God forbid if it was a lull, everyone from the left is going to make out because the current coming down this direction. And you can actually see a little bit of an eddy here at times too. So, so that's why I say get your charts, look where you're sailing, try and use your interpolation of what you think the current's going to do. Go out and observe it. Is it right? Is it wrong? And the more times you do that, the better off you are. And I think that's pretty much. Is there anything else after that? Yeah, let's see what they are. Yeah. Then that's the open water course. Yeah, the here a lot of times they'll have courses in this area, and especially let's say it's blowing from the like a sea breeze. Sea breeze is going to be fairly steady, 15-degree shifts, and if there's any current, it's all going to be down this channel here. We sailed a J70 regatta. I was sailing with a guy, and it was amazing. We knew there was a lot of current, and we ended up winning the regatta by a lot. And the reason being is we would get off the starting line, and we would be the first people on starboard tack heading out of the current. And what we would do is, let's see, let's take a look at the bay here. There's a weather mark up here. And the, sitting here like this. We start here. Let's just say start here. And these guys would be starting on starboard tack. We'd start up here at the committee boat side, and they would set off like a pack, and we would, everyone's on starboard tack. They can't make it, no one can tack because they're all right next to each other. And so we get over here and we tack and we head this direction. Well, we could see houses on the shoreline here. And what happens is these guys, the houses were getting ahead of them constantly, so we knew we were moving faster than they were, so we get over here, maybe hit a couple shifts, and then get around here, and they would be, I'd say, 30, 40 boat lengths behind us, and what happened is that happened for 3 consecutive races. Yeah. And it's like the first time we said, usually you don't take ranges on moving boats, but when the ranges start beating the moving boats, you got something working, Well, what happened is the current was coming this direction. So they were sailing in the current, into the heavier current. We were sailing into the, staying in current, but not as much. They were on starboard tack. Like, how you get lined up next to a boat and you just can't tack and there's a pack going? Well, they were pushing each other all the way over there. So, yeah, they were doing fine on each other. They're saying, hey, but here we are out of the current heading the right direction, So they were racing each other, but they weren't racing us. So it makes a big difference. So that's where open course racing really pays off, knowing where you are. So, all right, next. Oh. Can you go back at all? All right. All right. Well, thanks a lot. I mean, I really enjoyed this. I love talking about sailing, and like I said, this is my first time doing it, and I hope that you learn something here, and all this material I went over, it's out there, and these are some really good things to go to that are free. JulianHowarth.com he's very mathematical and does a great presentation. Speed and Smarts is Dave Dallenbach. He sells a newsletter. If you like tactics and stuff, get on his newsletter at least for a year, or buy a packet. Just buy one of his packets. And he's probably one of the most experienced guys I know. Sailing Zing has come up recently, and there's a group of guys just doing it for fun. And Sail Zing, they're a bunch of scout sailors out of the Midwest that try and help each other learn. Winning in One Design by Dave Perry. Dave Perry is one of my idols, and that's a great book. And then Wind Strategy by Dave Houghton. If he covers a little bit about current, maybe a page, but he is the head meteorologist for the British sailing team, who is probably the most dominant sailing team in the world, and he's one of their key players. And when it talks about sea breezes, that like we get, when to expect them, how to get them, wind around points of land, things like that. That book is done. It's done by the Royal Yacht Racing Association. Has a series of books, and that's one of them. And it's probably one of the better ones. So, so. Oh yeah, sorry.
Get there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, here's one of his things. When I used one of his examples for the course going up, and then this is the stuff that he puts together for all the tactics and everything else. And this is just you get this probably once every other month, and it's a beautiful program. You can pass it around if you want. It's And he does a great job. There's no question about it.
So, hi, this is Rick.
So we got a question that came in online about the difference in currents, like what the exact speed difference would be from like the main channel versus on the edges. Is there, do you know anything about that? Like what would be the, like 2 knot versus 1 knot, or, you know?
I would think that I always think 1 knot is a lot of current for around here, you know, but I'm sure, I know. Yeah. Believe it or not, the weather buoy that's out here actually has a, I checked it yesterday or this morning. I didn't know if it had current and direction. I knew it has wind, but I didn't know about water. And it does. And all those weather buoys do, but it must be out of calibration because it never got below 1.5 knots. It went up to about 3.5 knots, and it never went to 0 when the tide changed. You know, and so you know, when you rely on those sources, validate them. That's why going, you know, when you go out in the race course, it doesn't matter all the homework you've done. It doesn't matter what people have told you, what the best meteorologists told you. It's what's happening then and now. So it's up to you to interpret that when it happens. And so, you know, people say, go right. Well, what's right? You know, I mean, is it a 10-degree shift or is it a 5-degree shift? Is it more ways? Is it less ways? Is, you know, are you staying close to your competition, or is there less current or more current? Is it a favorable current? Is it you know, negligible? Am I better on port tack, or my lead set up so that port tack's better than starboard tack? You know, it goes on and on. So there's so many variables out there that just live in the moment of what you're doing right then and use your best knowledge, judgment. And when that, you'll learn more instead of saying, you know, following everyone. Well, Joe says he's the best sailor out there. He says go left. Okay, yeah, right. Take that with a grain of salt.
So do you pay attention to when wind shifts are expected to, like, you know, it's going to shift left at about 2 o'clock, so you want to?
You keep your eye out there. Yeah, because you know, if you see dark water rolling down and the wave patterns change to the left, you know, hey, it's a half hour late, but it's coming, you know. But then again, I've done this many times. As you say, okay, it's coming. I'm going to stay on this side, and it kind of comes and it stays out there. It just doesn't move towards you, you know. So, you know, you can get fooled by it.
So,
so one of my questions I have is, so when the tide is changing, which I guess is always, so when it's going from flood to flood F or something, so is it always that the channels are going to switch ahead of time relative to the shallows? That the change is led by the deep water and is trailed by the shallow water?
No,
Is that going
no, it's the opposite, because the friction will slow down the edges first.
So the shallows are going to switch before.
Yes.
So you're going to see that change, and that doesn't matter if you run from flood to ebb or ebb to flood.
Right.
And then my other question is, and because I did print out just this morning, I printed out the last 7 days. I did think 4.5 knots seemed like a lot of current at the Annapolis buoy. Is one of the things I noted about the Annapolis buoy, so it's kind of right on the north end of the channel coming into the Severn as you're heading towards Greenberry Point, right?
Mhm.
So it's kind of like getting in, it's kind of at that spot, and there's water coming from all directions.
Mhm.
So I always find, whenever I look at the tide there, I never really have, or the current, I never really know how to interpret it. But one of the things I know is that when it goes from ebb to flood, it doesn't just reverse.
No.
It's like it clocks over the course of, you know, an hour or something.
I'll tell you what, I've been sailing here for 30 years. It still confuses me, especially as you go to the next area. Well, actually, just right in this general area, you got all these tributaries and the main river. And I think what you'll see is that the tributaries actually change earlier. I think someone told me that, but I'll tell you what, you get in here and you're right. It's confusing because it's all different vectors
Right.
at different times, and yeah, that's the dynamics of it.
Any rules of thumb that, as you kind of you're starting interpretations that you then.
Well, just remember that it takes longer for a large mass to slow down. So the main channel is going to slow down after the tributary. And then same thing as it slows down and stops, it takes more for it to start up, but it's going to start moving faster. So the tributaries are going to start moving the opposite direction earlier. So.
Oh, I just wanted to come up with,
Watch out. Okay, is it on?
it's speed and smart is pretty cool.
It is. It's very good.
So it says something called the moving rug analogy, and it says what I thought was interesting because you were mentioning this earlier. What happens to sailboats sailing in a current is a lot like what happens to objects that are placed on top of a moving rug. When you pull the rug, all the objects move in the same direction. It doesn't matter where they are aiming or how fast they're going or where their booms are located. They will all move equally in the direction that the rug is being pulled.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's it. That's kind of that's the example that I was trying to say here was that yeah, the boats will you're never think of what's happening with the boats, the current against the bottom. You're moving with it.
And everybody.
Everybody is,
Not smart.
but not the mark.
So
Yeah, it's just relative. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, it's relative to where its position is, but it doesn't affect the dynamic.
Well, that's why I was thinking that if you are up, if you were the boat, tack, maybe you will be going faster because you are both moving down, and you are now going with the current.
Yeah, but
So-
but the thing is that with that it changes your apparent wind, and that's your sailing wind. So
Okay.
so
I got it.
and that's what it's doing. As you're moving down, your apparent wind goes down like this, and so that makes it.
I have two things I want to point out. The first one is a question of I've looked at rivers, and you see patches where there's waves or wrinkles, whatever you want to call it, and then glass areas. That current, what's causing the different shapes of the water?
It can be.
So a glassy area would have less current going on there.
Sometimes less
Yeah, but you
wind.
see patterns. It's very hard to say that like the wind stopped in that circle and it stopped in that circle. I feel like.
Yeah, well, I mean, it can be deceiving. You know, I used to go out in the bay where it's wide expanses and very calm. And as the sea breeze coming in and you see these puffs coming in, you'll be in a total glass calm spot and it'll be a lot of wind, and it's just skip off the surface.
Oh.
You know, and so who knows? I mean, those are those variables that you have to. You just say, oh well, it's there, you know.
Right.
But there are courses that I've been in if you go down to Deltaville, there's a shoreline that kind of looks like this. and then there's a point of land out like this. And this goes out to the bay. Well, there's some shoals right in here and in here, and maybe a flat that comes out like that, and a flat that comes out like that. And so you might see waves standing up in those areas, or you might see it, yeah, you'll see the waves standing up in those areas, and or you might see a scum line. If this is the channel actually goes like this. You'll see some turbulent froth, maybe in these areas, so it's that's why you get out there and you
Yeah.
see what the situation is.
My second comment, I think, is a little less current, but something you mentioned with when you're coming back down and you're on a broad reach or a run. We were talking about packing. I think most of the time what we do here is we all just go straight and we're on the run. Is it faster to take your pack and go down that way on angle?
You mean going downwind?
Yeah.
Every boat's different. But just remember, you have a
Oh,
foil
that's
ship.
I meant jibe.
Yeah, jives, but every boat's different. So, of course, the closest, the shortest distance between 2 points is, a straight line.
Right.
But way a sail's made is that as long as you get flow over it, that it'll cause some acceleration and apparent wind. So you kind of think of, you guys probably were taught this, that there's two modes of sailing. There's push and pull. And so when the sails are achieving, their dynamics where they can have the flow of the sail wind like this, they generate their own speed, so they can, that's the pull mode, and they can go faster than the wind. But if you are going dead downwind and you have a sail out here, another sail out here, push mode, you can only go as fast as the wind. So when this boat changes to a jibing angle, he puts it back into pull mode and it can go faster. So there's they have all these different ways of calculating this, but some boats it's faster to go on angles, and then some boats it's faster just to go straight downwind. And that's some of the interpretation you have to do that. And now with like a J70, you've seen sailing around here, they have asymmetrical spinnakers and they do big jiving angles, and but every once in a while you see one going wing and wing and go dead downwind because that's just faster that. But so you have to experiment.
I'd like to ask a personal, add a personal experience on this. I was a crew on a Alberg 30 in this case. Symmetrical spinnakers were going downwind. We were second. Spinnakers out, flying out, and going straight downwind. My skipper said, "Well, we're not going to overtake him." So he went on a broad reach, did a jibe, and we got the gun.
Mm-hmm.
So it sometimes is faster, and it's if you're behind another boat on a downwind leg, you may want to try it. Otherwise, you're going to go as fast as the wind and like the other guy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep, do what works. All right, well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
You know, you can make this chart using this one. You just use highlighter on the 6 feet, 12 feet, 18 feet,
Uh-huh.
and you get that chart.
I'll tell you what, I have never been able to print good charts, so I don't know how you guys do that, but that's great.
Yeah, but by drawing just
Uh-huh.